On the eve of my dissertation defense, my husband held me fast as my mother-in-law yelled, "There's no need for you to be so high and mighty, Miss Know-it-all." They brutally sheared my hair to put me in my place, certain the humiliation would keep me indoors. Yet an hour later, as I stepped onto that stage, my father, the Major General, stood up from his chair at the head table and the real drama began to unfold. Before we begin, please subscribe and press the like button. Your support helps me make more tales like this one. Enjoy the story. Immy Jameson dwelled amidst the echoes of the past, which was a reality she fully embraced. Her little world was scented with old tomes, archive dust, and potent black tea. The piles of monographs stacked on her two-bedroom condo's floor in Southeast DC meant more to her existence than fashion, magazines, or the aging photos from the turn of the 20th century. These held her interest far more than all the clamor from social media. At 30 years of age, she was nearing the culmination of her life's ambition in the last phase of his crafting her dissertation on the history of Black enterprise along DC's U.S. Street corridor amid the Great Migration. This project was her calling, her legacy, her flight from the dull reality of a blue-collar neighborhood apartment block. Her husband Amari couldn't comprehend this refuge. For him, a 32-year-old head mechanic at an auto repair shop, life was straightforward and tangible. The vehicle has to work, supper has to be served, and his wife must welcome him with a pleasant smile. He patronizingly called her academic papers a little hobby. "How's it going, historian?" he would say, entering the kitchen where Immy, encircled by her books, attempted to fit in a chapter between her tasks. "Drowning in ancient dust once more. You should be in here frying some catfish instead." Without a word, she would rise and move to the stove. Fighting with him was futile. She loved him, or at least the man Amari used to be in the first several years of their union, the happy, powerful man who respected her intellect and boasted to his pals about how his wife was destined to be a scholar. But as time went on, his pride soured into annoyance, particularly once they relocated to the condo he received from his father, located just beside his mother, Mama Nyala. Mama Nyala, a retired manager at a DC Department of Motor Vehicles DMV branch, was a direct and plain-spoken woman. In her mind, the world was split between right and wrong. What was right was a wife in the kitchen bringing up kids and listening to her husband. All else was incorrect, and Immy's dissertation was the pinnacle of wrongness. "She's overly clever, son," she would say to Amari, believing Immy couldn't hear. "That's not the type men desire. Those little books of hers will lead her nowhere good. She just sits there straining her eyes while my Amari goes hungry." Immy did her best to ignore it. She was accustomed to being isolated. Her family life was complex. Her mother passed away when Immy was just 15 years old, and her father, Major General Elias Vance, was a stern and distant man. He brought her up like a soldier, completely devoid of sentiment. Their connection was perpetually strained, filled with misinterpretations. They had nearly ceased all communication. Following her marriage to Amari, a simple blue-collar man which went against her father's will. Yet a month prior to his 60th birthday, she resolved to phone him. Their discussion was stilted, but then he surprisingly inquired, "How is your project going?" "Coming." "My dissertation, Dad?" she corrected gently. "I'm finishing up. The defense is soon." "That's good," he responded, after a pause. "You must see things through to the end." That brief talk gave her strength. For the very first time in years, she sensed that perhaps, just perhaps, he was proud of her. That specific day was exceptionally difficult. Her academic advisor sent back the third chapter covered in corrections, and Imani realized she faced an all-nighter. She was in the kitchen, struggling to focus when Mamala entered. She resided in the adjacent unit and would let herself in unannounced with her own spare key. "Still buried in those little books," she announced from the doorway, putting a bag of groceries on the table. And this kitchen floor is still unswept. Good afternoon, Mama Nyala. I was just getting ready to clean, Imani answered politely. Getting ready, her mother-in-law parroted. While you're getting ready, we'll all be living in filth. A woman must put her house in order first before she gets to her foolishness. She strode into the living room, swiped her finger theatrically across the bookshelf, and scowled at the dust. Amari will return from work exhausted, and this house is a disaster. You don't value him, Imani. You don't appreciate him one bit. Any other woman would worship the ground he walks on for marrying you and giving you this home. Imani's fists tightened beneath the table. Each word was a stinging barb. She knew arguing was futile. Any response would just be used against her. I will clean everything now, she said softly. Yes, you do us that favor, Mama jeered, then blasted the TV, turning it to some trashy daytime talk show in the living room. Concentration became impossible. Imani shut her laptop. It was clear they would not let her work today. She rose, grabbing the mop and the bucket. Her mother-in-law observed her with a smug grin. She had won this small battle. As Imani mopped the floor, a single thought replayed in her mind. Just a bit longer. Just endure until the defense, and then everything would be different. She would get her degree, secure a university job, and become financially independent and finally escape this constant criticism, this degrading control. She had no idea yet that her husband and mother-in-law were plotting a very different future for her, one that had no room for her dissertation or her dreams. The tension in the home escalated daily, becoming nearly palpable like a dense fog. Every page Imani wrote, every night spent with her books, was taken by Amari and his mother as a personal affront. They appeared to have forged a quiet alliance to demonstrate the futility of her ambitions. Mama Nyala now visited every single day, and her visits devolved into deliberate sabotage. She would begin vacuuming noisily just as Imani attempted to call her advisor or launch a massive cleaning of the kitchen, dumping every cabinet's contents on the table where her daughter-in-law was working. Oh, pay me no mind, she'd say with a facade of innocence. I'm not in your way. I just want to create some order. When Amari came home, he no longer inquired about the dissertation's progress. Instead, he began listing his grievances from the doorway. My boss made my life hell today, he would lament, tossing his jacket on a chair. I get home to no proper meal and no welcoming wife. There's only you and your papers. Dinner is on the stove. You just have to heat it up, Imani would respond, her voice hushed with restraint. Heat it up, he would parrot, indignant. I must prepare my own meal. I work all day long at the shop while you're here at home just staring at the walls. I am not staring at the walls, Amari. I am working. Her voice quivered with suppressed offense. That isn't work, he interjected. That's a foolish pastime. Work pays our bills, and you're just wasting money on your books and trips to the archives. It was deeply unfair. Imani received a small postgraduate stipend and earned additional money by writing articles for historical journals. With that, she covered her own modest needs and a part of the household bills, but Amari and Mama Nyala chose to ignore it. In their world, she was a liability. One evening, distraught by their constant criticism, Imani locked herself in the bathroom and phoned her father. She did not intend to complain. She simply longed to hear a familiar voice. Dad, hey. Hello, daughter. His voice was as stern as always, but it held a trace of warmth. Is something amiss? You sound peculiar? No, everything is fine. I'm just worn out. Working so much. The dissertation, I presume? Yes, the pre-defense is approaching. It is a critical milestone. The main thing is not to quit. I believe in you. Imani was stunned into silence, unable to speak. At 30 years old, it was the very first time she had ever heard him say those words. I believe in you, Dad, she replied, swallowing the lump forming in her throat. And would you want to come to my defense? There was a pause on the line. Why, he eventually asked. I won't understand any of it. I would be like an outsider. I would just really love for you to be there, she breathed. He fell silent once more. Fine, he conceded at last. If it is that important to you, send the date and location. I will be there. Emerging from the bathroom, she had tears in her eyes, not from despair, but from a glimmer of hope. She had an ally distant and awkward at showing his feelings, but a real one. The following day, Mama Nala truly outdid herself. She showed up with a massive pot of beef stew. Here, she announced, forcing it into the refrigerator. I've cooked for the entire week because I see my dear Amari is getting skinny on your sandwiches. Imani was floored. Mama Nala, of course, completely ignored that Imani had prepared a full 3-course meal just the day before. That evening, as Amari ate the stew, enthusiastically praising it, Mama Nala delivered her subsequent strike. I spoke with our neighbor, Miss Val. She began approaching the subject indirectly. Her niece, a lovely girl from a humble background, works as a cashier at Safeway. She is looking for an inexpensive place to rent. Imani tensed up, sensing trouble was brewing. Her mother-in-law gave her a look that promised absolutely nothing good. Have a room that's practically unused, the one Imani uses for her papers. Why don't we let her rent it for a while? It helps her, and we can make a little extra money. Imani choked on her tea. Renting to a stranger in their 2-bedroom condo where she barely had any room to work. It was unbearable. Mama Yala, that is impossible, she said with firmness. It is my study. I work in there. Study, her mother-in-law scoffed. Don't make me laugh. You just spread your junk around and call it a study. Mom, seriously, that is not convenient. Amari intervened, seeming genuinely astonished by the notion. It's not convenient to put trousers on your head, Mama snapped back. Helping a good person, that is what is convenient. I already promised Val. Niece we would give it some thought. Go tell her we did, and our decision is a firm no. Imani said, her voice dripping with ice. Mama Yala's lips tightened into a thin line. Rejection was an unfamiliar insult. That remains to be seen, she snarled. We'll see what you say once Amari grows weary of being your crutch. She shot up from her chair and the door crashed shut behind her. She was gone. Amari turned to his wife, his face a mask of guilt. Imani, I am so sorry. I had no idea she would suggest that. Her ideas aren't the issue, Amari, she answered wearily. The problem is that you let her. She began to gather the plates, and retreated to her study. She sat at her desk, but work was impossible. She felt as if she were in a fortress under siege. Fortress. She knew her adversaries would not back down. They would probe her defenses relentlessly until they discovered a vulnerability. Weak point. And her greatest vulnerability was her own husband. The much-anticipated letter from the university came on a dull, dreary Tuesday. Ordinary Tuesday. Imani was sorting the mail, pushing past bills and flyers, when her eyes caught the official university stationery. Official envelope bearing the Georgetown University seal. Her heart paused, then thudded loudly in her chest. Her hands began to trembled as she broke the seal. There on thick, formal paper were the words she had been waiting to read for 5 years. Dear Imani Jameson, we are writing to inform you that your dissertation defense for the degree of Doctor of Historical Sciences is scheduled for March 15, 2024 at 2 in the afternoon. She reread the words over and over, unable to believe it. March 15th. In just 3 weeks. It was finally real. An end to the long agony of sleepless nights and self-imposed isolation. Tears of pure relief and happiness traced paths down her cheeks. She instantly dialed her advisor, Professor Sandoval, and he readily confirmed the scheduled date, and offered his congratulations. I never had a doubt, Imani, he told her, his voice gravelly from cigarettes. Your work is exceptional, solid. The important part is to nail the defense. The committee doesn't play around. I will be prepared, she promised. Her next call went to her father. Dad, they've set the date. It's March 15th. Copy that, he replied, as concise as a military dispatch. I will be there. Despite his typical reserve, Imani detected the pride in his tone, which meant more to her than any other praise. Praise. She decided a small celebration was in order. She purchased a bottle of good wine, her favorite kind of blue cheese, and then baked her signature apple pie. She yearned to share this happy moment with her husband, clinging to the hope he could be happy for her again. Before Amari returned from work exhausted and irritable. I've got some wonderful news, she announced, forcing a cheerful tone into her voice, bright as she could. What now? He grunted, tossing his keys on the sideboard. Please don't tell me you splurged on another expensive book. Book. It's not that. She passed him the official letter. They've set my defense date. He took it and glanced over it, his expression unreadable. Nothing. No happiness, not even surprise, just dull fatigue. Oh, he finally said. I see. The 15th is a Friday, so I'll need to ask for time off. The day off to attend. It's not required for you to be there, you know, she said softly, the hurt rising in her throat. Tightened in her throat. What are you talking about, not required? My wife is defending her doctorate. We have to maintain appearances. Appearances. What will people say? It was all about how it looked. What will people say? That was the only thing that mattered to him now. It wasn't her achievement or her dream, only how others would perceive it. Just then, Mama Nyala made her entrance uninvited as ever, unannounced as was her habit. Overhearing the last phrase, she immediately inserted herself into their discussion. A defense. What are you on about? She questioned. Hello, Mom. Imani has a date for her defense. Amari announced, his voice tinged with apology. Mama Nyala took the letter, adjusted the glasses hanging from her neck chain, and scrutinized it. Doctor of Sciences. She spat, her voice laced with pure venom. Well, look at the big shot you've become. And what's the use? Will you be bringing more money into this house? Perhaps, Imani answered calmly. Doctors have higher earnings. Higher? Her mother-in-law scoffed. And who's going to feed your husband while you're off at your conferences? Sana. She slammed the letter down onto the table. Take my advice, Imani, and end this nonsense. You should be focused on having a second child. Amari requires an heir. You dote over those papers as if they were a precious egg. A woman's place is with her family, not in science. Science is a man's domain. This had escalated beyond passive aggression. It was a direct assault, an attempt to demolish everything she held dear. Mama Nyala. Imani rose to her feet. Her hands quivered slightly, yet her voice remained firm. This is my life, and I alone will decide how I am going to live it, whether that means another child or finishing my dissertation. Oh, so that's the tone you're taking now. Her mother-in-law also rose, her face flushing crimson. You've learned how to disrespect your elders. She's ordering me around your own mother. You put her in her place. Amari stood between them, conflicted and miserable. His gaze went from his mother to his wife. Mom, Imani didn't mean that. She just lost control. She certainly did. Mama Nyala snapped back. I will not tolerate being spoken to like that in this house. This is not your house, Imani stated, her voice quiet but clear. It is your son's house, and my claim here is equal to his. Mama Nyala choked on a gasp, utterly scandalized. Her mouth opened to unleash a tirade, but then it snapped shut. Her eyes burned with pure hatred as she stared at Imani, snatched her handbag, and stormed out without a single word. A heavy silence descended upon the room. Why did you do that? Amari finally broke the silence. Couldn't you have just kept quiet? No, Amari, she answered, meeting his gaze. Not any longer. She realized in that moment they had passed the point of no return. It was the very first time she had ever openly defied his mother, and he had failed to support her. His choice of neutrality felt like a profound betrayal. The celebratory meal was completely ruined. The bottle of wine was left untouched. Imani silently gathered everything and retreated to her study. She was certain that her mother-in-law would not let this go. She would seek her revenge, and it would be vicious. After the scandal, Mama Nyala disappeared from sight. For several days there were no calls or visits. Imani knew this was merely the calm before the storm. Her mother-in-law was plotting retribution, and intuition told her the blow would strike at the very heart of her life, her dissertation. Imani roamed the house under a dark cloud of gloom. He acted as though nothing had even happened. Yet the tension was so thick you could slice it with a knife. He was consumed by guilt, but admitting it was beyond him. Instead, he sought refuge in petty complaints. "Why are my shirts not ironed?" he would ask each morning, fully aware. Imani had been working until 3 in the morning. "The refrigerator is bare again," he would announce nightly, ignoring that. He had not set foot in a grocery store all week. Imani remained silent. She was conserving her strength for the primary conflict. All her thoughts were focused on preparing for the defense. She rewrote her speech and prepared answers to anticipated questions. Potential queries, reviewing each chapter 100 times. Then one Saturday, as she worked, Mama Nyala strolled in unannounced, a sickeningly sweet smile on her face. "Hello, dear. I think our fight was pointless," she purred. "We are all on edge. My Imani is busy as a bee. I'm here to help." She then placed a bucket and a mop down. "I'll just tidy up a bit, sweep dust. You, my sweet Imani, you just focus. Don't mind me at all. Distract you." Imani was immediately on guard. This sudden benevolence was so unlike her mother-in-law. "I appreciate it, Mama Nyala, but there's no need. I'll clean later." "Nonsense," she waved her hands. "Just focus on your studies, dear. I will be as quiet as can be." Imani, preparing to go fishing with friends, was delighted. "See, Imani, you thought she held a grudge. Thanks, Mom." With that, he departed, leaving Imani alone with his mother. Mama Nyala began cleaning with a disturbing fervor, making a racket with the bucket, scrubbed aggressively and hummed loudly. Concentration was futile. Imani sighed, deciding to take a short break to get groceries at the market. "I won't be long," she informed her mother-in-law. "Go on, of course." The woman smiled. "I will keep an eye on things." Imani's departure was her greatest error. She came back within the hour. An eerie silence filled the apartment. Mama Nyala had vanished. Imani walked to her study and froze at the threshold. The scene before her was a nightmare. Her desk was in chaos, books were tossed about, papers strewn. But that was not the most devastating part. The huge stack of drafts, her meticulous notes, and precious archival materials she had gathered for years were gone. On her desk, a single folded note was left behind. Imani picked it up with shaking hands. "My dear Imani," it began in her mother-in-law's cursive. "I was tidying up, and I stumbled upon a pile of useless trash on your desk. I thought I would help clear the clutter for you. I tossed it all in the dumpster. You are welcome. Your loving mother-in-law?" The world seemed to drop from under Imani's feet. She raced to the dumpster in the hall, but it was far too late. The garbage was collected that morning. All was lost. Years of hard work, singular and irreplaceable research. She crumbled to the hallway floor, sobbing. This was not simple vengeance. It was an assassination, the killing of her dream. When Imani came home from fishing happy and discovered his wife in a dreadful state, she sat on the bedroom floor amidst scattered books, just rocking slowly, back and forth as if in a trance. "Imani, what's wrong?" he asked, alarmed. Without a word, she simply handed him the note. As he read it, his expression shifted. "My mother," he whispered. "She wouldn't. She didn't realize." "She realized everything, Imani," she shrieked, her voice a torrent of anguish, rage, and despair. "She did it deliberately to stop my defense, to ruin me? I will call her." He took out his phone. "Don't," Imani stopped him. "Do not debase yourself." She rose to her feet. The tears were gone, leaving a barren wasteland in her eyes. "I want her to never set foot in this house again. she stated calmly. Ever. He stared terrified. He knew this was not a fit of hysterics. It was a final demand. All right, he agreed. I will speak with her. I'll tell her not to come into the hall to take the call. Imani could hear his muffled tones at first firm and demanding, then softening. She could hear him asking, Mom, why did you do that? I know you wanted what's best. No, she's not going anywhere. I'll talk to her. She will calm down. In that moment, Imani understood it all. He had betrayed her once more. He hadn't defended her at all. He was making excuses for her. He was seeking a compromise where none existed. She drifted to the window. Outside, a fine, irritating drizzle fell as gray and hopeless as her own life felt. Her mind raced, calculating the time she had left. Just 3 weeks to salvage something from the wreckage of her research. The odds were stacked against her, but she had to try. Not for him, nor for his mother, but for her own sake, and for her father, who had promised he would be there. She simply could not disappoint him. She would work around the clock. She would achieve the impossible, and once the defense was over, she would walk away and never set foot in this house of deceit and betrayal again. The following 3 weeks turned into a relentless, exhausting marathon for Imani. She survived on 3 or 4 hours of sleep a night, grabbing food when she could, often forgetting to eat at all. Their apartment descended into a state of chaos that neither of them seemed to notice. A guilty Imani attempted to help around the house, preparing basic meals and pulling laundry from the machine, but his efforts were clumsy and awkward. Mostly, he just made a point of staying out of Imani's way. True to Imani's word, Mama Nyala stayed away, yet her unseen presence lingered over everything like a shadow. She telephoned her son each day, and those conversations left him increasingly sullen and short-tempered. My mother is deeply concerned, he remarked one evening, as Imani, her eyes bloodshot with exhaustion, attempted to piece together a rare archival quote from memory. She claims she didn't intend for this to happen, that she wasn't thinking clearly. Tell her not to be concerned, Imani retorted, her gaze fixed on her screen. Just tell her to think more carefully next time before she discards years of another person's hard work. You're being too harsh with her, he chided. And she wasn't harsh with me. Imani shot him a heavy glare. Imani, let's make a deal. Until my defense is over, we will not discuss your mother. If we do, I won't be able to focus. His lips thinned, clearly offended, but he didn't protest. Imani worked like a woman possessed, reaching out to colleagues in various cities to request scans of crucial articles, and scoured online libraries for hours on end, searching for leads. Her advisor, Professor Sandoval, was incensed when he learned what had occurred. This is absolute barbarism, he boomed through the phone. You should sue her for damages. It's not worth it, she replied, her voice tired. I just want to finish this. Can you do it? He asked, his tone softer. You're running out of time. I can do it, she stated with conviction. And she did. Days before her defense, she sent him the completed version and presentation. She was utterly drained, bone-weary, and exhausted, but deeply satisfied. She had accomplished everything she possibly could. Throughout that ordeal, her father's calls were her lifeline. He would call every 2 or 3 days and ask curtly, "How is it going? Need any help?" After hearing her reply, "I'm handling it," he would simply say, "Stay strong," and end the call. These brief, military-like exchanges meant more to her than hours of friendly sympathy. He had faith in her, and she knew she had no right to let him down. On the day preceding her defense, she purchased a new dress, simple, elegant, and a deep green that accentuated the green in her exhausted eyes. She took the time to do her hair. Her beautiful brown hair, unstyled for weeks, now fell into gentle curls. She needed to appear dignified. This was her fight, and she was prepared for it. That evening, Imani came to her unexpectedly holding a drooping bouquet of carnations purchased from a gas station. "These are for you," he muttered. "Thank you," she replied, taking them. Imani gazed at her with wretched begging. "I know I was mistaken about everything, but perhaps after tomorrow, once this is all done, we could attempt to begin again." She studied his handsome yet frail face and felt an absolute void. Not rage, not insult, simply nothingness. "Let's discuss that tomorrow," she responded. She had no desire to offer false hope, yet she also wished to avoid starting a conflict before the most critical day. She retired early but found no sleep mentally reciting her entire speech, along with potential questions and her answers. She felt prepared, sure of her work, yet a clinging anxiety, a thick fear refused to release its grip. She had a feeling Nyala would not surrender so easily. She wasn't one to concede defeat, and that thought would not leave her in peace. Little did she know her most dreadful nightmare was on her doorstep, and that this very night marked the final hours of her previous life. She was still unaware that the following day she would defend not only her dissertation but her fundamental right to exist as a person. Imani awoke well before sunrise, gripped by a strange dread. She lay in the gloom, hearing Amari's steady breathing, unable to pinpoint the source of her disquiet. Everything seemed to be in order. Her speech was perfected down to the final word. The presentation was on the USB drive. Her dress lay on the chair. Yet the foreboding sense of disaster persisted. She rose silently and walked to the kitchen for a glass of water. As she switched on the light, a sharp gasp escaped her. Imani and his mother sat at the table. They were not asleep. They were waiting for her. "What? What are you doing here?" Imani whispered. His mother rose slowly, a sinister smile on her face. In her hand she clutched the electric clippers, the very ones Imani used for his haircut. "We've come to put things right," she said softly. Imani got to his feet as well. He refused to look at her, his gaze fixed on the floor. "Imani, what is happening?" Imani retreated. "You have an inflated opinion of yourself, Imani," he stated in a flat, strange voice. "You believe you're too clever. Men don't desire women like that," his mother added, moving closer. "They prefer simple housewives, and you have forgotten your place." "What are you saying?" Imani pressed herself against the wall, her heart leaping into her throat. "We are going to remind you," her mother-in-law sneered. "So you stop thinking you're so special, so you learn who is in control of this house. You will not be parading your lovely hair for strangers on some academic committee. There's no need for that, Miss Know-it-all." And then Imani realized everything. The idea was so barbaric, so grotesque, that her mind recoiled in disbelief. "Yes," Imani confirmed with a nod and finally met her gaze. His eyes held no love or compassion, only a cold, awkward jealousy. "Mother is right. This is enough," he shouted, lunging toward her. Imani shrieked, struggling to get away, but his strength was greater. He seized her, wrenching her arms behind her back, and slammed her body against the wall. She fought back, attempting to bite him, but his grip was firm. "Hold her still now," his mother commanded. She moved in from behind, and Imani felt the chilling touch of metal on the nape of her neck. The humming began. "No, please don't," she screamed, but her plea was swallowed by the loud buzzing of the clippers. She felt the first tress of her long brown hair, her pride, her only adornment, drifted to the floor, then the second, then the third. Mama worked with swift, cruel expertise like a barber. She cut the hair, shaving it close to the skin, chanting, "There, so you know your place. So you remember that you are a woman, and a woman's duty is to cook, not to defend a dissertation." Imani began to sob. Her body quaked with silent weeping. Imani held her fast, his hot, ragged breath falling on her neck. He said absolutely nothing. He was just the executioner, his mother's sharp tool. In minutes, it was finished. Mama Nyala switched off the clippers. "Done," she said with satisfaction, admiring her grim work. Much better. Looks like a modest woman now. Amari let her go. Imani slid down the wall until she was on the floor. She was afraid to raise her head and look at them. She felt naked, humiliated, and trampled. Look at yourself, her mother-in-law barked. Imani didn't move. Then Amari, so roughly, seized her by the chin and forced her to look up. I said, look at yourself. He dragged her over to the hallway mirror. An ugly, strange being stared back from the glass, a face swollen with tears and pathetic tufts of hair pointing in every direction with huge eyes wide in horror. Well, Mama Nyala chuckled from just behind her. Are you still going to your defense now? Will you shame yourself before the professors? Imani was silent, unable to form a single word, a knot tight in her throat. That's what I thought. Her mother-in-law nodded. Stay home, cry, and Amari will comfort you. They thought that they had broken her, that they had won. They turned and went to the bedroom, leaving her there alone on the hallway floor. She heard the bed springs groan. They had gone to sleep, their grim duty done. Imani lay on the cold floor, trembling. She looked at her reflection, that horrible face, and felt both the pain and despair give way to something new, a cold and icy hatred taut as a wire. They were so wrong. They had not broken her. They had awakened a monster in her. Imani didn't know how long she sat there on the cold hallway floor. The minutes blurred into a viscous mass of horror and shame. Each time she glanced up at the mirror, a new wave of nausea would rise in her throat. She saw not herself but a victim, a disfigured creature with a shaven head and tear-filled eyes. They had accomplished their mission. They had trampled her, destroying her femininity and her spirit. From the bedroom came the sound of Amari's soft snoring. He was sleeping. After what he did, he just lay down and slept. That realization was perhaps worse than the shaving. He was not just an accomplice. He was the true instigator. He brought his mother into it. He held her down while his mother cut. He, her own husband, whom she trusted. She slowly got up. Her legs felt like cotton. She went to the kitchen and poured some water into a glass. Her hands were shaking so much that she spilled it. She looked at the clumps of hair strewn on the linoleum, her beautiful, long brown hair. She then remembered how Amari had adored it. In their first year, he had spent hours running his fingers right through it, burying his face in it, smelling it. Your hair smells like sunshine and wind, he once whispered. Where was that boy? Who was this cruel stranger sleeping in her bed? She knelt and picked up the tufts one by one like fragments of her shattered life. She didn't weep. The tears were gone, leaving only a dry, burning ache inside her chest. She thought about what to do next. Her dissertation defense. Mama Nyala's words echoed true. How could she appear in this state? What words could she possibly utter? How could she face her professors, her colleagues, her own father? The very thought of her father was the most excruciating. He would be there, seated in the front row, and witness her utterly humiliated, completely shattered. The man who loathed weakness would feel nothing but shame. In that instant, the urge to forsake it all, to barricade herself away from every living soul, was nearly overpowering. They had triumphed. They had accomplished their malicious goal. She resolved not to attend the defense. She would surrender everything, her dream, her career, her very future. She would finally become what they desired, a silent, submissive, broken woman who understood her place. She sank to the floor, clutching her knees and rocking her thoughts, a murky fog imprisoned within this house, this marriage, this utter humiliation. The thought of death surfaced not as a plan, but as a release from the agony to simply close her eyes and never awaken. Yet then she glanced at her desk, at the neatly stacked pages, the final draft of her dissertation. 5 years of her existence, hundreds of nights without sleep, thousands of volumes consumed. This was more than mere research. It was her essence, her intellect, her soul, Her very will. Could she truly allow them to annihilate that as well? Would she let them seize the final thing she possessed? She rose to her feet, moved toward the desk and lifted the weighty volume. Her hand glided across its smooth cover. She recalled her advisor's words. Imani, you possess a genuine talent for research. Do not let it be buried. She then remembered her father's voice. I believe in you. No, she would not capitulate. She would attend the defense precisely as she was now. Let the entire world witness what they had done to her. The shame would not be hers to bear. It would be theirs alone. She strode to the mirror and faced her reflection once more. Yes, she was disfigured. But within the gaze of that reflection, fear had vanished. In its place was hatred as cold and clear as tempered steel. And that very hatred became her strength. She was no longer a victim. She was a warrior, marching into her final decisive battle. Pain, in a strange way, brings clarity when it reaches its zenith. It incinerates all that is superfluous. Fear, doubt, self-pity, all gone. Only survival and the need for action remained. Imani felt that critical breaking point ignite within her. Her tears evaporated. The trembling ceased. Despair gave way to a chilling and resonant fury. She glanced at the clock. It was 3:30 in the morning, less than 10 hours before her defense. She would not be sleeping. She would prepare herself not merely to defend her dissertation, but to defend her very existence. First, she gathered the shorn locks from the floor, sealing them in a bag as evidence of the crime. Because that is what it was. She washed her face, brushed her teeth. Mundane routines that began to restore her sense of control. Then she entered the bedroom. Amari was asleep, sprawled out with a perfectly serene expression like some traitorous angel. Imani paused, observing him. The love had vanished completely. Only a cold, distant curiosity was left. How could a person sink to such depths? She opened the closet in silence. She had to find a way to cover her head, not from a place of shame, but to prevent any distraction from what was essential: her speech, her work. She sifted through her collection of scarves and shawls, and her fingertips brushed against something soft and cool to the touch. She drew it out, a silk scarf she had purchased many years ago, but had never once worn. It was a deep emerald green, the very color of resilience, of rebirth. She returned to the mirror and began to tie it. After several attempts, the arrangement was perfect. It framed her face, concealing the devastation, and yet it highlighted her essence. Eyes burned with a determined, dangerous fire. Much better, she thought. Nothing would distract from her true focus. She was utterly transformed. The former Imani, quiet and submissive, who held her tongue for domestic peace, perished that night. A new woman emerged, one who understood the cost of treachery and was prepared to claim retribution. And she realized she would not pursue vengeance with their tactics of screaming scandal and shame. She would handle it, uniquely, with elegance and without mercy. She took out her phone, finding her dad's contact. She paused for a moment. He needed to know. He must be there. She made the call. He picked up instantly, as if he had been wide awake. Imani, what's wrong? His voice carried alarm. His father's instinct sensed trouble. Dad. Her voice trembled and broke. She fought back tears, but they streamed down her face. Dad, they... And she recounted it all. Fractured, choked by sobs, the dissertation, the arguments, her mother-in-law's venom, the events of an hour prior, the clippers, and the hair scattered on the floor, Mama Nyala's laughter. From the other end, a heavy, palpable silence. Dad, she whispered, scared. I hear you. His tone was low and chilling, the sound of an irreversible order. Are they still inside the apartment? Yes. They are asleep, she replied. Listen to me very carefully, daughter. Get your documents, your laptop, and leave that place immediately. But where will I go? I am sending a car. It will arrive at your building in 40 minutes. My driver is taking you to a hotel. I will handle all the arrangements. You will rest for a few hours, prepare, and attend your defense. Dad, I can't appear like this. You will go exactly like this. His voice was iron. Do you understand me, Imani? You will go, and you will defend your work. 5 years you've worked for this. You will not permit those. He paused, seeking the right word. You will not let those individuals destroy you. I'll be right there in the front row. I intend to be proud of my daughter. Imani was completely stunned. She had anticipated fury counsel or reprimand, not this swift tactical military-grade support. Do you understand? He reiterated. Yes, Dad. Good. As for your husband and his mother, I will address them later. Don't you worry. He hung up. The tears had vanished. A resolve as hard as granite settled over her. She was no longer alone. Her father was on her side. Swiftly and silently, she collected her essential items, the dress, her shoes, the laptop, the USB drive with her presentation, and the printed dissertation. Before she departed, she paused at the bedroom door, gazing at the sleeping Amari. He mumbled something in his slumber and rolled over. She observed him not with hatred but with a cold, remote disdain. He no longer existed for her. She wrote a brief note. I have gone. Do not search for me. She placed it on the kitchen table and departed without a backward glance, shutting the door on her former life. Outside, a black vehicle with official DC license plates was waiting. The Willard Intercontinental Hotel in downtown DC welcomed her with its silence and the aroma of polished wood. The driver, a reserved man, in plain clothes, accompanied her to the 5th floor, handed her the key card, and stated concisely, General Vance requested that you get some rest. Everything has been arranged. The suite was both spacious and elegant. A large bed was dressed in white linens, with a panoramic window that surveyed the waking city. Imani dropped her bag on the floor and approached the window. The sun was ascending, coloring the sky in a gentle pink hue. She gazed upon the stirring city and felt completely renewed. The night before felt like a strange, awful dream. She took a long, hot shower, cleansing herself not only of dirt, but of the clinging humiliation. She had a light breakfast and coffee sent to the room, needing to recover her strength, as sleep had not visited her. She simply lay in bed, gazing at the ceiling, her mind unexpectedly clear. Her father's plan was truly brilliant in its simplicity. It was more than just moral support. He had extracted her from a poisonous environment, giving her a space to heal, insulating her from her enemies. He had operated like a strategist. She thought of him, her stern and quiet father. Her entire life she had believed he did not love her, that he was embarrassed by her passion for history, but in truth, he just didn't know how to express his feelings. In that critical moment, he was the only person who, without any hesitation, stood firmly by her side. Around 10 o'clock, she began to prepare. She pulled out the dark green dress and slipped it on. It was a perfect fit. Then came the emerald scarf. Now calm, she tied it with care. The result was stylish and one of a kind. It concealed the cruel shearing of her hair and drew attention in a powerful way, and it created a mysterious, formidable image. She looked at herself in the mirror, at a woman she barely recognized, but one who was beautiful, strong, confident, and absolutely unbreakable. She then took out her laptop and rehearsed her speech one final time. The words flowed from her with ease and confidence. She had total command of her material. She thought about what must be unfolding in her former apartment. She envisioned Amari waking, discovering the note. His initial confusion, his rising panic. He would surely call his mother. Mama Nyala's hysteria, the accusations, the threats. Imani smiled. Their world built on control and manipulation was crumbling, and they were the ones who had brought it down. The same car came to pick her up. The driver opened the doctor without a word. They drove towards the university. Imani recognized the familiar streets, but they somehow looked different. She wasn't heading towards an execution as she had believed hours before. She was on her way to her triumph. She walked into the main building a half-hour early. The hallway was already filled with people, graduate students, professors, and other students. Upon seeing her, many went quiet, their curious glances following her. Her striking attire, the elegant dress, and the emerald turban commanded attention. She was not ashamed. She walked with her head held high, acknowledging acquaintances. Professor Sandoval was waiting at the auditorium door. He looked at her, his face etched with concern. "Imani Jameson," he said. "I heard your husband telephoned. He mentioned you were sick." "As you can clearly see, I am perfectly fine." She smiled calmly, but her appearance made him pause. "It's my new style, Professor Sandoval," she stated. "I decided to change my entire image for my new life." He observed her intently, and in his wise eyes she could read his understanding. "Well," he said, "bold, extremely bold. Good luck with the defense." "Thank you," she responded. She stepped into the hall. At the long table sat the members of the committee, stern-faced and gray-haired professors. In the audience were dozens of spectators, and in the front row center, stage sat him, her father, in his Class A uniform with every decoration sitting ramrod straight, completely motionless, his eyes fixed on her. In his gaze was not a trace of pity, only calm, unwavering support. Imani realized she feared nothing anymore. She walked to the podium, placed her notes, which she knew by heart, upon it, and looked out at the room. "Distinguished Chair, esteemed members of the dissertation committee, dear colleagues." Her voice was perfectly even and self-assured. "Allow me to present." As she started, a profound sense of triumph washed over her. She had already won. Imani began to speak, and with each passing word, her voice solidified and her confidence soared. She recounted the customs and life within D.C. during the 1930s, detailing the new Black entrepreneurs and the clash of the old world with the new. She lost herself in her most cherished era, the turmoil of the previous night fading away. Now only she, her work, and the audience mattered. She saw how the committee members listened with rapt attention, how Professor Sandoval offered an affirming nod, and how her father never once took his gaze from her. Her delivery concluded in precisely 20 minutes, adhering to the regulations. When she finished, a momentary hush blanketed the hall before erupting into applause. It was not mere polite clapping, but a wave of loud, genuine acclaim. Imani saw with astonishment that not only her friends and colleagues were applauding, but the stern professors on the committee as well. She stepped down from the podium and took her seat beside her advisor. The intricate, challenging questions began, but she was fully prepared. She responded with clarity and precision, showcasing a deep command of her subject. She debated, upheld her vision, and it became apparent the committee was thoroughly impressed. Midway through the academic exchange, the door creaked open, hesitating for a moment. Two heads peeked inside. Amari and Mama Nyala had arrived to relish in her expected failure. They had surely called. The university discovered her location and could not resist the potential spectacle. They expected to find a submissive, weeping, and shamed woman. They found a confident scholar effortlessly deflecting attacks from expert professors, their faces contorted with astonishment, but the greatest shock was still to come. Their eyes swept the room, falling upon the uniformed figure in the front row. Mama Yala gasped, a hand flying to her chest. Amari's face went white. They recognized him, Major General Vance, her father. They had presumed she was an orphan, vulnerable, and completely alone. They had never once taken her stories about her father seriously, dismissing them as mere childish fantasies. And yet, there he sat, undeniably real and imposing. His focus was not on her. He was looking directly at them. Mama Yala clutched her son's arm. They attempted a quiet retreat, but it was much too late. Her father had seen them. He did not move. His expression remained unchanged. He just continued to stare. And within that gaze was a cold fury so intense that it must have frozen them from the inside out. The defense proceeded. Her opponent spoke, followed by her advisor's glowing remarks. Professor Sandoval stated in his commentary, "This is not simply a good dissertation. It is the work of a true scholar with an unbreakable will and immense courage." He gave her a significant look, and she knew that he understood, or at least suspected. The committee withdrew to deliberate. It was a mere formality. No one questioned the outcome. In 10 minutes they re-entered and the chair declared, by the unanimous decision of the Dissertation Committee of Georgetown University, the esteemed degree of Doctor of Historical Sciences is conferred upon Imani Jameson. The hall exploded with applause. People rose to their feet approaching her, offering congratulations and shaking her hand. Imani accepted them with a smile while watching her father from the corner of her eye. He did not rush. He waited. As the tide of well-wishers receded, he rose to his feet, squaring his shoulders. His very presence radiated power and authority. He did not walk to her. He strode toward the exit where Amari and Mama Nyala were, huddled. Disoriented, they could not move. His gaze held them fast like an invisible chain. He approached them. Good afternoon," he stated softly, yet his voice resonated through the silent hall with the force of a thunderclap. "I am Major General Vance Amani's father, and I presume you must be her husband and her mother-in-law." Amari muttered incoherently. Mama Nyala just shrugged. "It appears to me," the father continued, maintaining his calm, "that we need to have a discussion. A talk regarding education, family values, and certain aggravated assault charges." Mama gasped. "Son." He looked directly at Amari. "I need you to do something for me. And come along with me. We have a brief man-to-man chat that needs to happen." His heavy hand landed on Amari's shoulder like a lead weight. At that very moment, two powerfully built men in crisp civilian suits emerged by the exit, seeming to materialize from thin air. They closed in on Amari from both sides. "Time to go." One said, his voice civil but firm, while they gripped him by the elbows and escorted him away. He offered no resistance, walking like a lamb to the slaughter. The father then turned his attention back to Mama Nyala, who looked as if she might faint at any moment. "With you, madam, we will speak later," he stated. "Once your son has finished telling us everything. In the meantime, go home and wait." He turned and strode towards Imani, leaving Mama Nyala stranded alone in the center of the hall. All eyes turned to her, a mixture of curiosity, scorn, and judgment. It was her personal gallows, and she was ascending the steps entirely alone. Mama Nyala remained frozen in the middle of the university hallway, a motionless statue. The sounds of applause, congratulations, and the dull murmur of voices reached her as though through thick cotton wool. Passers-by shot her curious, indirect looks as they went. She felt utterly exposed, humiliated, and crushed. Her supposedly brilliant plan, her cunning revenge, had completely and utterly backfired. She had yearned to witness Imani's humiliation, but instead she was faced with her triumph. She had intended to break her, but instead, she met an unbreakable fortress standing behind her. The general, that uniform, the medals, that cold, unforgiving stare, that promised nothing but trouble. It had all been real. Imani was not lying, and now that dreadful man had taken away her son, her Amari, into the unknown, escorted by two silent thugs. Panic seized her heart in an icy grip. What would they do to her boy? What exactly did the general mean by a man-to-man talk? The words about assault charges echoed menacingly in her mind. She tried to envision Amari's fate, and her mind painted horrific scenes of him being driven in a black car to a desolate, secluded spot, or being interrogated inside a cold, damp basement. She bolted for the exit, frantic to see where they had taken him. But the street offered nothing. No car, no Amari, no general. There was only the city's chaos, rushing students and traffic. She pulled out her phone, her fingers trembling as she dialed his number. Endless ringing, but no answer. A second attempt proved just as useless. She collapsed onto a bench near the entrance, her legs too weak to hold her. What could she do? Where could she possibly go? Report it to the police? What could she even say? Yes, hello. A general abducted my son because we ganged up and shaved his daughter's hair off last night. It sounded utterly insane. She sat frozen on the cold bench as life simply flowed by. Students were laughing, young couples were in love, professors hurrying by. Her entire world had just collapsed. She suddenly grasped the full weight of her actions. She had always seen herself as intelligent, shrewd, and manipulative. In reality, she was an arrogant fool whose blind hatred for her daughter-in-law had just destroyed her own son. She thought about Imani. The quiet, meek girl she had so despised had turned out to be strong and truly unbreakable. She did more than just resist. She had won. She won not with screaming or hysterics, but with intellect and self-respect. For Mamala, it was the most profound disgrace imaginable. Meanwhile, in a warm cafe close to the university, Imani was seated at a table with her father. His uniform was gone, wearing a simple pressed shirt, appearing less formidable and more like a weary older man. "Congratulations, doctor," he said, lifting his teacup. "I am so proud of you." Imani beamed. "Those words mean more than any diploma. Thank you, Dad, for being here, and for it all. A family must protect itself whatever it takes." He nodded. "What becomes of Amari?" she ventured. Her father's gaze was sharp. "Rest assured they will not lay a hand on him. They will simply have a conversation, explain the fundamentals of how a real man should behave, the consequences for a man who strikes. A woman, particularly a general's daughter. I trust he will grasp the lesson. And his mother." His father's expression grew grim. "With her, the discussion will be a legal one. My aide is already drafting the documents. We are suing for emotional damages and for harassment. We aren't seeking prison. We intend to destroy her financially. We will strip her of everything, ensuring she remembers this lesson for life." Imani was quiet. It was harsh, yet just. "Dad, perhaps we shouldn't," she whispered. "Leave her to God." "God resides in heaven," he interjected. "Here on earth we have law and honor. She defiled our family's name. She shamed you, and she must face the consequences." He placed his warm, strong hand over hers. "Imani," his voice softened. "I know I failed as a father. Too consumed by my duty, I neglected to give you my attention. I hold myself responsible for your marriage to him. I failed to see the danger in time, but I intend to fix that. Let me shield you." "You already have," she whispered. They remained there, and for the first time in ages, peace and calm settled between them. The great divide that had separated them for so long had finally started to close. Elsewhere in the city, in a sterile, nameless office, Amari sat facing two very serious-looking men. There were no threats or shouting. They questioned him calmly, methodically, and their very composure terrified him. They asked about his work, his income, his life with Imani, who paid for their condo, the groceries. He could only stammer. He tried to lie. They simply produced documents, bank records, and laid them out in silence. His fabrications disintegrated. Next, they questioned him about the previous night, every single detail. His mother's words, his actions. The realization hit him. They knew it all, each word, each movement. "Do you comprehend, young man?" one of them finally asked, "that your conduct violates multiple articles of the criminal code? Unlawful confinement, physical assault, and making threats against her life. Those carry grave penalties." Amari sat hunched and speechless. "However, General Vance is merciful," the second man continued. "He has no desire to destroy your life just yet. He offers you one condition, an immediate divorce. You will relinquish all property to Imani Jameson, and you will never go near her or her family again. Ever." There was a pause. "Otherwise, this discussion continues." in an official capacity somewhere else with different individuals. Is that clear? Imani nodded frantically. Excellent, the first man stated. You are dismissed. He rose on unsteady legs and departed. He was free, yet he felt as if his life had ended. He had forfeited everything, and it was entirely his own fault. As he exited the nondescript office building where cold night was already falling, he had no idea how many hours he had spent answering those quiet, terrible questions. Questions. An hour passed then, two an eternity. He felt wrung out, hollow, petrified. The menace was veiled but palpable. Realized Imani's father was not making an idle threat. His very life was on the line. He avoided going home. His mother was there and, facing her now was unthinkable. She was the cause of it all. She had pulled him into this nightmare. He went to a friend's residence. He claimed he'd argued with Imani and needed a place to stay. He spent the night drinking cheap brandy and truly thinking. For the first time in ages, he actually reflected. He re-examined his life with Imani, and a grotesque image emerged. He finally saw himself as immature, self-centered, and feeble, cowering behind his mother and then his wife. He had let his mother degrade the very woman he believed he loved. He resented her accomplishments instead of taking pride in them, and ultimately he committed the final betrayal. He had betrayed her, subjecting her to monstrous humiliation. The next morning, head throbbing and heart aching, he returned home. He knew he had to confront his mother. Mama met him at the door, her face pale but her eyes blazing. "What has happened?" she demanded. "Where have you been? What did that man do to you?" "We spoke, Mom," he said, stepping inside. "And what of it? Did he threaten you? Lecture you on how to live your life, what to do and not to, and you were frightened?" Her tone dripped with contempt. A spineless boy before a general's authority. "Yes, Mom, I was afraid." He met her gaze directly. "And do you know the reason why? Because he was absolutely right. Our behavior was despicable." "How dare you say that?" she screeched. "I was only defending our family. I was teaching that arrogant woman a lesson." "You scarred someone for life," he roared back. "You destroyed not only her life but my own as well. Thanks to you, I've lost it all. My wife, my house, my self-respect." "Wife," she scoffed. "You can find 100 more who are simple and compliant." "I don't want simple. I wanted her," he roared, slamming his fist on the wall. "And you are the one who took her from me." The argument raged for hours. For the first time ever, he refused to yield, refused to back down. He released years of accumulated pain, guilt, and resentment for her smothering affection. In the end, it was she who finally broke, sinking onto the sofa in tears. "What are we going to do now, my son?" she whimpered. "We..." He gave a bitter smile. "There is no we, left, Mom. There's only you and there's me, and I must find a way to go on living." He walked to his room, shutting the door behind him. The following day, he officially filed for divorce. Imani was informed by the lawyer her father hired that the proceedings would be swift. Imani made no claims to any assets. He agreed to sign all the papers. 1 week after her defense, Imani went back to the condominium. It belonged solely to her now. Imani and his mother were gone. The space was empty and silent, yet the air felt lighter. She wandered through each room. Expecting a sting of painful memories, she instead felt only a profound sense of relief. She began her new existence. She renovated the space, discarding old furniture that held echoes of the past. She immersed herself in work teaching at the university and publishing articles. Her name gained prominence within academic circles. Her father became a frequent visitor. They would share tea in her newly remodeled sunlit kitchen. Their conversations spanned history, politics, and life itself. She was getting to know him all over again. What a Truly remarkable, brilliant, and resilient man she had nearly lost forever. Mama Yala attempted to reach her on several occasions. She would call, pleading for her forgiveness. My dearest Imani, I see it all so clearly now. She'd weep. I was mistaken. Please forgive this foolish, old woman. Imani listened, not believing a single word. I forgive you, Mama Yala, she would state, but I have no desire to see you again, to be a part of my life. Yet Imari pleaded, he's in agony. He truly loves you. Imani had made her decision. Her reply would be brief and final, then she'd disconnect. She knew it was the correct choice. She had stood up for herself, kept herself safe, and reclaimed justice. At last, she was liberated, free to construct the life she desired, unburdened by the judgment of others, and without the weight of fear or shame. She had triumphed, and her victory tasted sweet, like the fresh air of spring following a harsh winter. 2 years went by. Spring had arrived in D.C., arriving early and warm. Imani stood on the balcony of her new townhouse, observing her father, the esteemed Major General Vance, as he taught her 2-year-old son Kofi how to fly a kite. She had welcomed her son just 1 year after meeting her new husband Kellen, an architect. She'd encountered at a conference. Their life together was serene and joyful, built upon a foundation of mutual respect and unwavering trust. Her entire world had been remade following the ordeal. She ascended rapidly in her career, achieving the rank of associate professor, authoring acclaimed books, and finding herself truly independent and content. Her home with Kellen was now filled with sunlight, constant laughter, and an abundance of love. Thoughts of Imari and his mother were rare, like a fading nightmare. She was aware they still lived together in that same condominium. Imari had never bounced back. He was dismissed from his position and survived on scattered mechanic work. Rumor was he drank to excess. Mama Yala had grown old and stooped. Her domineering spirit persisted, yet she had no one left to command. Her own son was a shattered man, and the family had withdrawn upon hearing the truth of the matter. She was utterly alone. One afternoon, while walking with her father and her son through Rock Creek Park, they came upon her unexpectedly. Mama Yala sat on a bench by herself, scattering crumbs for the pigeons. She looked up, her expression twisting as she saw them. First she identified Imani, then the general. Her eyes then settled upon the gleeful child clinging to his grandfather's hand. "Is that your son?" she murmured as they drew near. "Yes," Imani answered with composure. "He is my son, and this is my father, his grandfather." Mama Yala's eyes shifted to the general, then to the joyous child, and finally back to Imani. In that stare, Imani detected not animosity, but something far worse, a dark, bottomless envy. It was envy for the life Imani had created, for the joy Mama Yala had ultimately denied herself. She uttered not a single word more. She simply turned her back. Imani continued down the path, now holding her father's arm. Close by, her son darted ahead, his laughter echoing. Glancing towards the clear spring heavens, she reflected on how remarkable life could be. At times, to discover genuine happiness, one must first traverse the deepest of hells. She had walked through that fire and come out triumphant. This tale shows how even from the deepest darkness one can step into the light by refusing to surrender and trusting in oneself. If this narrative resonated with you, we invite you to show your support with a like and subscribe to our channel. Share with us in the comments if you have ever had to fight for your own dignity and the way you prevailed. Your encouragement allows us to bring more true-to-life stories to you. We thank you for joining us.